Picture a tense gathering of global titans, where one modest nation suddenly rewrites the rules of the entire game. You are observing a summit involving the planet's premier martial coalition. Along the perimeter sit the usual power players. Unexpectedly, a soft-spoken participant raises their hand to suggest something so radical that the room falls into stunned silence. This isn't coming from the Oval Office, number 10 Downing Street, or the LEC. Instead, the proposal originates from Ottawa, and they aren't requesting advanced missiles or additional infantry. They are demanding the authorization to manage the finances, the massive, multi-billion-dollar strategic reservoir of the alliance. The response from the American delegation? Needless to say, it wasn't part of the morning agenda. Welcome to Winds of Thought, where we dissect the invisible maneuvers redefining our global landscape. Today, we explore how the Great White North executed a subtle, intentional, and incredibly gutsy play to oversee the fiscal machinery of Western defense, and the reason why the Pentagon was caught flat-footed. If you believe you grasp the mechanics of international influence, pay close attention. This narrative might just reshape your perspective. Power isn't always found in a rifle. Sometimes it's in the ledger. Before we proceed, do us a massive favor. Tap that like icon and join Winds of Thought. It supports our growth immensely and ensures you stay informed on every chapter of this developing geopolitical saga. Now, to grasp why this Canadian pivot is such a tectonic event, we must define what this war chest actually represents. We aren't discussing a literal trunk filled with gold bars. This is the collective treasury of the Alliance, officially designated as the Security Investment Program. Think of it as the coalition's primary credit line for constructing the massive shared infrastructure that facilitates collective protection. We are talking about billions required to establish and operate airfields in the Baltics, secure satellite arrays that resist interference, radar grids that penetrate deep into the horizon, and maritime hubs capable of hosting the world's largest carrier groups. This isn't pocket change. This is the resource that transforms a signed treaty into a tangible operational shield. For decades, the administration of these funds, deciding which initiatives receive backing and which face rejection, was a task reserved for the traditional giants. The United States, as the undisputed architect of the alliance, has always wielded immense, often unspoken control over this capital. It is a manifestation of influence that is less obvious than a brigade of tanks, but in many respects just as vital. It dictates the coalition's priorities on a structural level. So when a nation often characterized as a quiet, predictable neighbor suddenly volunteers to direct the economic theater, it broadcasts a very loud signal. It isn't merely a job application. It is a manifesto. It declares that they are ready to emerge from the shadow of their superpower ally and occupy a pivotal strategic station in shaping the future of global security. From the American viewpoint, that is a total wild card. So why did this happen now? What drove them to make this move at this specific juncture? The solution resides in a perfect alignment of international dread and local aspiration. Let us look back. For years following the collapse of the Soviet Union, many partners, including this one, were content to let Washington carry the heaviest loads. Defense budgets often lagged behind the required benchmarks. The world appeared, if not peaceful, then at least stable. Then 2014 happened, and the map of Eastern Europe was forcibly redrawn. That was the first alarm. Then came the massive escalation of 2022. That wasn't just an alarm. It was a tremor that cracked the foundations of the modern order. Suddenly, the abstract concept of conflict was a visceral, tragic reality at the border. The alliance reacted instantly, shipping hardware and reinforcing boundaries. But within this military frenzy, a more subtle realization was forming in places like Ottawa. The modern struggle isn't merely decided by ballistics. It is decided by liquidity, logistics, manufacturing loops, and economic resilience. In this environment, the person who oversees the purse strings is as vital as the one who operates the artillery. They spotted this opening. They recognized the requirement for a precise, open, and intensely efficient manager for the billions being aggregated. They looked inward and identified a unique institutional DNA. They are not a military behemoth, but they possess a worldwide standing for fiscal reliability, steady administration, and serving as a trustworthy mediator on the global stage. They are the ones you call when a complex diplomatic or financial crisis needs resolution without the theatrics. In the chaotic, high-stakes climate of a renewed alliance, that specific expertise suddenly gained immense value. They weren't just seeking a promotion, they were providing a fix for a vulnerability the coalition hadn't even fully diagnosed. But this is where the intrigue deepens. Let's look inside that closed-door session. When the delegation, guided by their sharpest diplomats, formally voiced interest in the role of the senior official for defense investment, the person who basically controls the vault, the American response was nuanced. Publicly, every alliance choice is a product of total agreement. Every member is equal. But privately, the Pentagon has long regarded this specific office as part of its own domain. It is a vital lever of control. The sentiment in some sectors of the State Department was likely, this is a technical position, sure, but it's our technical position to steer. The thought that a close partner, yet one that isn't a top-tier spender, would be authorizing multi-billion-dollar projects that the American military relies upon. Well, it caused a stir. It wasn't anger. It was more like an abrupt realization followed by a frantic internal strategy session. What does the neighbor know that we missed? What is the objective here? Reports indicate the response wasn't a hard refusal, but it was hesitant and necessitated a great deal of confidential dialogue. The superpower needed to be sold on the idea, and this moment of quiet friction exposes a profound reality about our current world order. The traditional pecking order is under stress. The old system, where one hegemon dictates every move, is fracturing under modern tensions. Middle-tier powers like Australia, South Korea, and others are no longer satisfied with just observing. They possess their own capacities and their own blueprints for the future, and they are increasingly prepared to take the lead, even in areas historically held by the giants. This move is a symptom of a much larger global reshuffling. We are in a world where the guidelines are being edited not through grand speeches, but through quiet requests for the keys to the treasury. Now you might wonder, are they even equipped for such a massive responsibility? That's a valid inquiry, and it's one they knew they had to answer with total clarity. So let's examine the credentials. Their pitch isn't based on troop counts. It's built on three pillars: integrity, administrative skill, and a unique geographic perspective. First, integrity. In a divided alliance where doubts about secret agendas often simmer, they are perhaps the most neutral candidate. They have no colonial history on the continent. They don't carry the political weight that sometimes follows London or Paris. They are seen as a practical, rule-following player. For smaller Eastern nations worried about being pawns in a superpower chess match, a neutral manager of the funds feels safer and more objective. Second, administration. Their civil service is world-renowned for managing complex frameworks. Running a multi-billion-dollar fund across 32 different nations is a logistical ordeal. It demands flawless bookkeeping, neutral assessment, and the backbone to tell a major power that their favorite project isn't a priority. They are engineered for this kind of meticulous, consensus-driven labor. And third, their global stance. They are a G7 member and a founding partner, but they are also a Pacific nation with increasing focus on the Arctic. They link the Atlantic concerns of the alliance with the new Pacific pressures that keep strategists up at night. This offers them a wider, more inclusive view of global threats. They can argue they are perfectly suited to ensure investments are balanced and ready for the future, not just focused on a single map. So, while they lack raw combat mass, they constructed an undeniable case based on talent and temperament. They weren't asking out of a sense of right. They were applying with a masterclass in strategy. But no power move occurs in isolation. For every action, there is a counter-reaction. Washington's initial shock transitioned into a phase of deep internal debate. The current administration and the defense establishment were confronted with a tough riddle. Do they back their nearest ally, sending a message of trust and rewarding boldness, or do they block it, indicating that the core financial controls are not up for negotiation? This was bigger than a job placement. It was a signal regarding the future of leadership itself. Would it be a leadership based on orders or one based on cooperation? The talks were undoubtedly intense. On one side, the case for support. It shows faith in a partner. it injects new vigor into a vital role, and it broadcasts unity at a time when adversaries are counting on Western infighting. On the other side, the danger of ceding oversight. Would their priorities stay perfectly in sync with American strategic needs? Would a new leadership style slow down time-sensitive projects? This internal tug-of-war is the engine of the story. It is the moment where theory meets the gritty reality of cash and control. As rumors from the halls of power began to circulate, a fascinating story took hold in the international media. The story of the polite partner who walked into the boardroom and asked for the executive chair. The surprise wasn't about a lack of manners, it was about the daring. A quiet, steady boldness that nobody had seen from Ottawa in a generation. This set the stage for the most critical phase, the high-stakes talks, the secret agreements, and the moment when this gamble would either succeed or crash. But to understand that peak, we must pause. Where were we? Right, the hat was in the ring and the math was being done. The shock was fading, replaced by the grind of diplomacy. This is where things get truly compelling. What followed wasn't a public fight. No angry press conferences occurred. Instead, the action shifted to the quiet corridors, the back channels, the secret files, the hushed meetings in Brussels over espresso. This is where the world is actually shaped. Far from the microphones, their team, knowing that the American blessing was essential, went to work. Their push wasn't loud. It was relentless, precise, and deeply diplomatic. They sat with their American peers not to demand, but to clarify. They detailed exactly how they would manage the portfolio. They stressed continuity. We aren't here to break the system. They stressed transparency. Everyone will see every cent. And most brilliantly, they stressed shared burdens. This lets you focus on the big strategic battles while we handle the grueling administrative grind. It was a pitch tailored to calm American nerves. They weren't asking to steer. They were offering to be the world-class engineer, ensuring the engine room was flawless so the captain could watch the horizon. For a superpower that has been asking partners to do more, this was a hard argument to ignore. How do you say no to someone literally asking for more work? Denying them would invalidate years of your own rhetoric, but the plot always thickens. Just as the U.S. was leaning toward a yes, a new factor appeared: Europe. Not as a single unit, but as a group of nations with their own anxieties. This was the second hurdle. Within the alliance, there is a long-standing tension between the North American branch and the European wing. The Europeans, especially those in the East who feel the most pressure, had their own ideas about the vault. Some loved the idea. To them, it was a fresh, fair alternative, a North American partner that wasn't the giant. It felt like the perfect middle ground. Others, specifically the larger powers with their own defense sectors, saw a chance. If the job was moving away from the U.S., why not a European? Doesn't the continent where the conflict is happening deserve to run the budget? Whispers of rival candidates started. Suddenly, it wasn't just about America. It was a multi-dimensional chess match. The quiet neighbor advantage was being tested against the local knowledge argument. Ottawa had to position itself as the choice everyone could live with, the one candidate no bloc would veto. Meanwhile, back home, this wasn't just about global prestige. It was tied to domestic reality. This link between global goals and local politics is our specialty. The government had faced years of heat for not spending the required 2% of GDP on their own military. It's a sore spot. By chasing this top role, they were attempting a clever pivot. They were saying, we might not be writing the check you want yet, but look at the value we bring. We provide the management and the integrity the whole alliance needs. Our worth isn't just in our dollars, it's in our expertise. It was a way to lead without immediately spending billions at home, a tricky political needle to thread. Then, a new factor changed everything. The conflict in the East turned into a grueling war of attrition. The initial unity began to show small cracks under the weight of costs. The need to spend every dollar perfectly became a matter of survival. Wasted money meant lives lost. This shift was a tailwind for the candidacy. Their whole pitch was built on accountability. As the war made those traits vital, the application looked less like an ambition and more like a solution. The problem changed, and they were the answer. This is a masterclass in timing. A year earlier, it might have failed. Now it was a strategic necessity. Over the months, a consensus formed. The US decided not to block it. The Europeans, unable to agree on anyone else, gave their nod. The machinery turned in Ottawa's favor. Just before the official word, a European diplomat summed it up perfectly. This isn't about taking from America, it's about the alliance maturing. That captures the shift. The old order of historical precedent is dying. The new order belongs to those who solve the current crisis. Then came the announcement. It was a simple press release, but the impact was massive. They got the keys. The request was granted. For Winds of Thought, this isn't just a staffing move. It's a precedent. It proves global power is now flexible. Influence is earned through competence at the right moment. Now comes the test. They must deliver. Every cent spent will be analyzed. They must balance the East with the Arctic and new tech. It is the ultimate review, with Western security on the line. For Washington, it's an adjustment, a move from control to persuasion. For the smaller nations, it feels like a fairer system. Ultimately, this play reveals the new rulebook. In an era of strain, the premium is on the managers. Ottawa saw it coming and moved. They didn't win with tanks. They won with a promise to be the best stewards of our shared safety. What's your take? Does this make the alliance stronger, or does it weaken the leader? Tell us below. And if this story of quiet ambition made you think, share it.